Thank you, Karina. And let me take just one moment to introduce myself. My name is Micaela Martinez, and I'm the Community Resilience Officer at the CEC. And this is our second webinar in our Community Resilience series this fall. And Karina, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Gracias, Micaela. Mi nombre
Thank
es
you,
Karina
Micaela.
Morales. Trabajo en el
Karina
Secretariado
Morales.
de la
I
Comisión
work
para la Cooperación
at the
Ambiental
CEC
y soy parte
Secretariat,
del equipo en
and I'm
grupos
part
consultivos
of
y
the consulting
participación.
groups and public participation.
Thank you. And so to get us started thinking about the topic, we wanted to have an interactive poll. So if you can put into the polling that should have popped up in your Zoom, your answer to the question, what comes to mind when you think of toxic cosmetics? And Karina, if you could repeat the question.
¿Qué te viene a la mente cuando
What
piensas en
comes to mind
cosméticos
when you think
tóxicos?
of toxic cosmetics?
Thank you. And so as you start to enter your answers, we should see the polling answers popping up on the screen. And I'll read some of the answers in English, and Karina will read some of the answers in Spanish. So one of the answers is disproportionate use and sale to people of color. Another is fertility issues, mercury and skin lightening creams.
En español tenemos salud, desinformación
In Spanish, we
e
have health, lack of
irresponsabilidad.
information, and irresponsibility.
I also see we have skin health damage, disinformation, skin discoloration, permanent damage to the skin and overall health. And we keep seeing health populated as being answered multiple times, which is great because that is one of the topics we'll cover today. Wonderful. So it looks like we don't have any more answers coming in at the moment. So with that, I think we'll turn it over to our first speaker, Lori Copan, and I'll have Lori introduce herself, and you can bring up your slides as well, Lori. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today. I hope more people will be attending, and this is an issue that's very passionate for me. My name is Lori Copan. I lead exposure prevention and education at the California Department of Public Health, a state that is contiguous to Mexico, and also a state with the majority of the population are Latinos, predominantly Mexican Americans. So there's a lot of relevance here between Mexico and California. And I myself, I am Canadian, so I feel very drawn to the three countries. I have been doing this work for about 16 years. And in that time, I've seen a tremendous amount of pain and frustration and people who don't understand what's going on when they are poisoned by skin lightening creams. So I know that I have a limited time. I'm a very tangential speaker. There's been a lot of stuff in my head from the last 16 years. And so please, Micaela, stop me if I need to be stopped. So I hope to talk about how mercury causes illness very quickly, creams that we've seen in California that contain mercury poisoning cases, which I hope to spend the most time on those. And I think they'll also be more interesting to our audience today, and healthcare costs associated with mercury in cosmetics. My advance button is suddenly not working. Oh, okay, there it goes. So just so we all know, and this is often something that is of surprise to people, but mercury is a very, very effective at decreasing pigmentation, the formation of melanin. There is an amino acid called tyrosine, an enzyme that breaks tyrosine down in the formation of melanin, which causes darker skin in the presence of triggers such as hormones and UV light. And the reason it's so impressive and useful is because in order to form melanin, tyrosine breaks down through tyrosinase, and in the tyrosinase process, mercury replaces copper. You'll see there's the chemical symbol for both of them in the little yellow box, and they both have +2. So anything with a +2 can come in and bump that copper right off of the chemical process and decrease melanin. But mercury really does that. It's also, just for your information, because it's relative to some of the cases we have, there's also, mercury is a very effective astringent. It was used on baby rashes, in teething powders in the 20s and 30s and before that. And so it really is a good disinfectant, and it's often used in acne for that reason. I guess I'm having some, okay. Very, very brief overview. These are the organ systems impacted by mercury that are interfered with by mercury. The neurological symptoms, the neurological system that centers in the brain, those are what we see predominantly in cases in California, and you'll see it throughout the world. When you read about mercury poisoning or mercury toxicity scientifically, many people just say the renal system and then the neurological system. That is not bearing out in our evidence here in California. The renal system, we do see some cases who have renal involvement or kidney damage, but really it's the neurological symptoms we see, and cardiovascular. I just want to bring to your awareness that we see two types of symptoms, and these are in the medical literature as well. We see neuropsychiatric symptoms. So whenever you hear psychiatric in the explanation of symptoms, think about things that you might, that we commonly know of linked with depression. And peripheral nervous system are symptoms that affect the nerves in our extremities predominantly, but also affect our faces. So as background, in California, when we think we have a mercury poisoning case, we first want to establish that a cosmetic that contains mercury was used, or that's by either the individual, or that it was used in the home, where somebody may be impacted by mercury, but they're not a cream user. So then once we know that the cream is involved, then we like to look at the symptoms to see if there's mercury toxicity, and we like to look at urine levels. Now, some people might say this is a very low urine level, but what we know happening at a cellular level from mercury is that mercury causes inflammation in cells all over the body. And what happens is that inflammation is kind of like a beautiful tomato that goes to a rotten tomato. It breaks down the cell structure in the body. So even when we're not seeing symptoms, we know that there's a potential for damage and harm to be happening at a cellular level in the body. We expect to see people who are sicker when they're using skin-lightening products for longer periods of time, when the concentration of mercury is higher in creams, and if the creams contain something called methylmercury. So the types of mercury we're talking about with these skin creams are inorganic mercury. That's that mercury, the Hg with 2 pluses, and it's usually bound to a salt within the creams. However, when it's methylmercury, which is often associated with fish, that means there's a carbon bound to the Hg plus 2. What that means is that mercury is more dangerous because the methylmercury more easily travels to the brain, and cadaver evidence has shown that that methylmercury can stay in the brain for 30 years. Inorganic mercury can be in the brain for a year to a year and a half, important to note that because of genetic differences across the human spectrum, we know that some people are more likely to show symptoms and some people not. And that's the same, like two people might get infected with COVID, but some might have symptoms and others will not. So in the California cases, very quickly, we have 80 people we've been following or have followed who we consider to be poisoned by mercury or with mercury toxicity. 98% of those cases in California are Mexican Americans or people of Mexican descent. We've collected 586 creams, and 25% of those creams are positive. And that's an extraordinary number and shows you the availability and the utility of mercury in skin lightening products. There we go. Just for your edification, in California, different from the rest of the country, almost the majority of our creams we consider them to be artisanal creams. So this is of 151 creams associated with mercury poisonings. 5% are commercial, such as this cream over here that was associated with a mercury poisoning case, Rosabelle. 9% of them are adulterated, trusted brands from Mexico, where a very smart person who knows that these creams are worth much more if I add a little other cream that contains mercury. This cream itself contained methyl mercury, and the person who used it was very, very sick. And if I have time, I'll explain more later. And these artisanal creams we see exclusively from Mexico. These are in our collection. And these creams are unlabeled, or they have a homemade label, or they have a computer-generated little label at the top. Our counterparts are good friends and colleagues from New York City Health Department, Minnesota Department of Health, and our colleagues who are working in nonprofits and non-governmental organizations predominantly are collecting creams that are considered commercial creams. And the creams we see in Mexico, I'm sorry to frighten you, my Mexican friends and colleagues on this call, but these are some of the creams that we've collected. Obviously, I talked about no labels being the most common creams we see, but these creams in these little containers that are 4-ounce containers that are curved on the top and curved on the bottom, they tend to have methyl mercury in them. So Tia Mana is over here is a very, very well-known Mexican brand, very highly used. And we see more and more, and it's definitely at a higher price point, this cream, Noon Care, and it was involved in a poisoning case in Minnesota as well as California. So looking at adults with skin who are our cases, so they used a cream or they live in a house where there's creams. Mostly all the adults did use creams. Here are the kinds of suffering that they experience. The health effects in blue are health effects that are related to what I call neuropsychiatric health effects. Very common when you have depression or some other kind of mental illness. These are the effects that you'll see. And obviously we understand that when you're in life, when you're stressed, these are also some of the things that you're going to experience. So it is no surprise that 80% of women who are our cases never get diagnosed or have difficulty with medical providers getting taken seriously, that these are issues that they want dealt with. We usually see more attention by medical providers when we see more of these peripheral neurological effects, when the face starts twitching, when your hands start twitching, when you're having problems walking, when you have pain, when you have numbness and tingling of your hands or your feet, then people start to pay attention in the medical system. Or at least from our perspective, that's when it rises to the challenge of, oh, I should do a medical workup. Something's going on because look at all of these issues this person has. One of these adults was a 44-year-old man who experienced all of these symptoms recently. This was a case from 2 or 3 months ago that we had in California. And he experienced all of these, and he also was hallucinating. He was using this cream that we had never seen before in our surveillance work called Ellie cream. And it turns out that he purchased that cream on WhatsApp. And there's a distributor in Santa Clara County here in California. And you can see these are distributors' phone numbers through WhatsApp across Mexico. Very sophisticated person whose name is easily able to be encountered in Mexico because she puts her name right on these labels that she also produces, Araceli Tapia. No, I suspect that's her back there, but she has a cosmetics store. She sells beauty products, and she's sophisticated at marketing these products. And here's how she does it. She uses young girls with light complexion who are beautiful to say, look, use these creams. And then she uses women in her marketing who with before and after. And this strategy, this promotional commercial strategy, is age old in promoting these creams. About 25 years ago, Sammy Sosa, who was a famous baseball player, Dominican baseball player from New York, was in many ads for creams in which there was a before and after photos. I just want to bring to your attention that these blue boxes or these blue parts of this chart are people who do not use creams, and the orange parts of the chart are people who do use creams. And what this tells you is that people use creams or don't use creams get impacted by mercury. All of these blue boxes are even over 100. You have people who don't use creams who have urine in their mercury. And remember, there can be a potential damage and harm being caused by this cellular breakdown. Children experience predominantly, we have 25 children in our database of cases. They experience predominantly these peripheral neurological effects. They even experience hypertension, which is because of the way that the mercury starts to break down cells in the autonomic nervous system. This is an actual case that was identified in Germany of a child who could not sit up, a 4-year-old child who was from an Afghan family, and the mother used skin-lightening products. This child had absolutely no ability to sit up because of being exposed, but not using themselves a mercury and skin lightening cream. We've run into a few boys and one man who I referred to earlier, the 44-year-old man who was severely ill, using skin lightening.
Yes. To let you flag you have 2 more minutes.
Thank you. Okay, I'll stop after this slide. So these boys use creams for acne. One boy collapsed, and this is not him, this is a stock photo, on the soccer field because he had no control of his limbs and he was hallucinating. So you will get the slides, they'll be posted online. But one thing to point out is he used this cream, which he only used it for a month, and he had all of these symptoms. And the reason that he got so sick in such a short period of time is because this cream had 20% of the cream contained mercury. So this is what it looks like in a home where a cream is used for even a short period of time. You have to call in hazmat men to clean up the mercury vapors in the house. Everything that the case touched contains mercury and off gases. And here is us, this is us trying to save some of the clothes and items from the family. But in the end, they pretty much lost almost all of their possessions from this cream that contained very high mercury. You can read for yourself about another woman who was in a coma from it, but basically we've seen in all of our cases misdiagnosis of mercury across the board, and we've seen tremendous money being spent to try to find out what is going on with people in the healthcare system, because we so poorly conduct medical histories to find out about mercury contamination. And one last slide. Thank you very much. We invite collaboration. Appreciate. I knew I was going to go over. So visit our resource page, and you can have another look at the slides once they're posted on the website. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for that, Lori. And we'll also be making the slides and the recording of this presentation available on our website. And so next, I would like to welcome our next speaker. Andrea, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and share your slides.
Perfecto, Micaela, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Micaela. I will start by sharing my screen and I'll introduce myself. Here we go. Sorry, it was just too small on the screen, but we're sorted. So I am an anthropologist from Peru. I studied in the Universidad Pontificia of Peru, as well as studying a master's degree in Mexico, and I have postdoctorate studies in the southern border of Mexico in the state of Chiapas. So if you'll allow me, I'll start with my presentation. First, I would like to start by saying that I have been researching beauty from my bachelor's degree in Peru and Mexico. And at least from my personal research conducted in both countries, I have always maintained that we need to use the correct terminology and to see how the people involved in research are moved or triggered by a couple of words. The first one being race. There is no other word that triggers as much as the word race does. This is why we have it in our starting slide. I will not go into the whole history of race in Mexico because we'd run out of time, but in Mexico, as a term and concept, race is a powerful concept of power and an instrument of domination, and that implies an exclusive society. And it also exists as an ideology with that becomes twisted, and that is also materialized in parts of the human body that falls also under categories and that are identifying factors. And we can also say that the body becomes a damnation, quote unquote. This is a quote from Mbembe. Even before it appears, that body has already been judged through techniques and beauty products, which allows us to define how to, quote unquote, a person should look. So this becomes a type of racism, which is also valued under the understanding of whiteness, which is different in terms of the socio-cultural context and our geographical context. In Mexico, we can make a difference between what Navarrete Suarez calls white and whiteness. Being white linked to the flesh and related to the Western European colonializing stereotype, and whiteness as assuming the values that go hand in hand with those, with that color of skin, with that race. It also involves religion and society overall, and these are instruments that have justified privileges from colonial times until now. So we are facing an elastic notion of what it is to be white and the so-called quality of people who are evaluated based on their bodies. So, as the next slide says, the face was and is used in the institution of a political and racial model, which happened all over Latin America. This type of face shows a way of identifying how each person identifies to a nation. This can be denied if it is not recognized as such. And it's not even a part of the nation, but as a woman, as a man, or even a human. In Mexico, attention to white skin has been linked.
Oh, one moment. I'm being asked by the interpreters if you could slow down.
Apologies, we need the speaker to slow down a little bit.
Thank you.
Decía de que la obtención de la piel blanca ha sido un objetivo
So,
histórico.
as we were saying, achieving this white skin has been part of political, health, economic, and migratory policies. And this goes hand in hand with objectifying the face in its aesthetic appreciation, whereas in economics, it becomes a lack of stability. Of course, this whiteness in the body is also compensated in late capitalism with the purpose of making affection and sexuality not tell the violence of this racism or separation or distancing that is implied. So here the authors that study race and beauty also insist on that unmeasured relevance of white skin. And here we can mention the creators of White Secret, which is a product sold under that name in Mexico. And they mentioned that aesthetics and beauty are linked with a chromatic system around purity, pollution, beauty, and ugliness. And in Mexico, this chromatic system is also a hierarchy of lightness. So we have the skin, which becomes a resource prone to modification and that formulates tools, techniques, products that serve to what Harris calls the economies of color, where there are goods and services moved around commercially and that have a social impact, meaning that there is a result that is linked to social mobility after using these products. So now I want to move to our initial research. This is actually an investigation we are currently conducting in Tapachula in the state of Chiapas. This is a city known as a city where a lot of immigrants arrive after crossing the Darien jungle on their way north, and they stay there. They're trapped in Tapachula. Specifically, this is happening after January 2025, and now moving outside of Tapachula has become a lot more difficult, even to reach the northern border and crossing into the United States. A lot of people have not only remained in Tapachula, but many have returned to their countries of origin. And I will not go into detail on the significant percentages of poverty and extreme poverty, of violence, sexual violence, and violence against all sorts of immigrants. So, going into our subject, we see a lot of skin lightening products, and in addition to all the connotations surrounding race and whiteness, in the countries of origin of these migrants, or at least what I have seen in my research, I have collected different nationalities from Central America, like Honduras, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, people from the Caribbean, from Haiti and Cuba, and also from South America, including Venezuela, and I'm forgetting a couple more nationalities. But they do share this aesthetic predilection for white skin. With this, they not only buy and use these products because of that preference, but also because they had also been using them from their countries of origin. Now, what is really important in this context is also to note that immigrant women, in particular, are are recognized as being more sexual beings if they are more, if their skin is lighter. Now, immigrant women are subjects of threats, of violence, even from the authorities, and they can even be arrested or detained or even reported because in the city they are more easily recognized as being foreign. So there is an instrumental use of these products because they understand that Mexicans might have lighter tones of skin, but also that Mexican women use these products. So immigrant women think that if they use these as well, they will go unnoticed in a way. Now, on the left, we have one of the soaps that we have found, and I have it here with me. This is sold in street markets, in the streets of downtown Tapachula. This is a rice soap. One of them was going for 200 pesos, so it's just over $10. There was another one going for $50. It's not $10, it's actually going for around $1 and the other one for $2.50. Now, we've received constant complaints by immigrant women about how they're treated. They're treated as threats to the moral and social status quo, and they're also seen as sexual beings, and they're of course subject to work instability. So, being seen as different, as more sexual, or even as darker, translates into selling and purchasing and using these products, which are not only used by immigrants, but also by the locals, both men and women. Now, there are certain nationalities. We see this especially in women from Haiti who hold several stands in the markets in Tapachula who sell these sort of products, not only soaps, face soaps, but also skin lotions
Andrea,
and creams.
wanted to flag for you 2 more minutes.
Ok. Entonces voy a
We have 2
pasar
more minutes for
aquí
Andrea. Okay,
porque
next.
una cosa que me parece importante encontrar y mencionar
I think it is
es que el
important to
uso
mention
también de
one of our
productos
findings,
blanqueadores
which
no
is
solamente
about the
obedece un
use
tema
of
del
skin
uso
lightening
cosmético,
products. And
sino
again,
también
it's not only
a algo que
uh,
investiga a Yu Saraswati
it is not only
y que
related to
menciona en
aesthetic
Indonesia como
use,
malu. Malu básicamente es un
but it is
sentimiento de
something that
vergüenza o de
relates
culpa.
to a sense of
Y lo que
guilt
ella dice es que usar
or
cremas
shame,
y
which is what
productos
we have seen in
blanqueadores tienen
southeastern
que ver con
women,
un
like
afecto.
in
Y
Malaysia.
que el
And
usar
women
estos
state
productos
there that using these
responde
products
a
relates to affection and how much affection they receive.
evidenciar de
So
que están
using them is an
intentando respetar
evidence
cánones de
of
nuevo no
the
solamente cosméticos,
respect
no solamente
of
incluso con respecto a raza, sino que
aesthetic
se está intentando
canons and preconceptions, not only when it comes to
respetar
beauty and
lo que
race, but
cada
also
nación que recibe a
respecting
las
what the
migrantes
nation state that
está
receives
entendiendo
immigrant
como
women
mujer, como
see
humana,
as
como
a
ciudadana.
quote unquote
En el
woman or
caso
citizen
de
or even
Ciudad de
human
México, que
being.
también investigué,
Now,
yo no
when it
encontré
comes to
esto
Mexico City, which
porque
we have also
súbito
researched,
con el
we
que se
found
estaba comprando los
this.
cosméticos que yo
And
ahí estudié, que eran de empresas de
we
gama
saw
media
people
alta,
buying
ya
products
encarnaban no
of
blancura necesariamente,
of
pero
even mid or
blanquear.
high end
Entonces
or
había
mid
otro tipo de
range.
demandas
They
y otro
focus
tipo
on
de
whiteness.
búsquedas de
So we see a
fisionomía
different
que se
type of
acercan a la
demand
blancura, por ejemplo,
or
por
a
ahí
different
aparece un manual
physical
de
type that
cómo hacer
is
la técnica del
looking
contorno o
for
del
lightness.
contouring,
And we have
afilando el
also
puente de la
products, for
nariz.
example,
También
that
en el caso de México,
discuss
haciendo más
contouring
redondo la forma de
to
los ojos,
change
porque lo
the shape of
identifican
the
como algo
face.
ideal,
In
y son
Mexico,
dobles y
rounder
redondos se
eyes
repite en
are more
toda
of an ideal, which
Latinoamérica.
is something that we
Y nada
see all
más ahí
over
voy a
Latin
terminar
America. I
conectando
will
quizás
end
con la
here.
ponencia anterior.
and linking to the previous presentation. So in Mexico, what we see is trying to discipline the subject and the body under different types of surveillance. In Tapachula, for example, from immigration authorities, and in Mexico City from employers who have manuals for uniformity, and there's also family and social pressure that carries with it an incarnation of beauty or quote unquote white skin, but also from something that should come from women who use these products. There's an assumption that beauty comes from within, that all the products that they use help that beauty become evident and material. So in this effort, we see that so-called responsibility of the users, and that is what they try to achieve by using these products. And that's my time. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrea. And I highly encourage the audience to please share your thoughts or any questions that you have in the Q&A box. After all 4 speakers have shared their work, then we'll move to a panel discussion where we'll be asking the questions of the speakers that you put in the box. Thank you so much. And so next we're going to move to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, if you'd like to introduce yourself and share your slides, that would be great.
Muchas gracias, Micaela.
Thank you very much, Micaela.
Ay, perdónenme. ¿Me escuchan? ¿Sí?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Me alegra mucho estar aquí.
I'm very happy to be here. My name is Elizabeth Campos, and I'm very involved in the development of this project that we call promotion, advancing supply chain transparency for chemicals and products. I'm going to speak very briefly so I can give more time to my colleagues. I'm going to talk specifically of a case study that we have regarding cosmetics and products, personal cleaning products. The scope of legal instruments and practices and tools that exist from manufacturers as well as from consumers, and they promote the communication of the chemical content in the products. As a result of a series of research, consultation, and case studies, we reached, well, the result of this project are 3 case studies, a series of recommendations for the region, and a collection of more than 200 practices and tools, legal tools, in order to make progress in this topic. And I'm going to talk specifically of the case of cosmetics, that it was identified as a sector that presents the best practices, because in our countries, this sector is highly regulated, because in the commercial, it has impacts on human health. And recently, like in the work of Andrea and Lori, there are several sectors that demand more information. The sector of personal use products, it's not very complex, because we have raw materials that are used. The amount of products and substances that are in the market are a very large amount. This is a market that is regulated, especially for communities that have the means to buy all these products. Some of the ingredients of the products, of the cosmetic products, depending on the exposure, the user, and the vulnerability of the person, they are linked to diseases like cancer,
problemas de desarrollo, problemas
development
reproductivos
problems,
o a la
reproductive
destrucción endógena y
problems,
bueno, los problemas de
and the
los que habló Lori.
problems that Lori
Ejemplos,
already
por
mentioned.
supuesto, está el mercurio,
Examples
pero existen
like,
muchas otras
like
sustancias de
mercury, but there
contaminación,
are
por
many other
ejemplo,
substances. For
los
example,
preservativos a bases de
the
formaldehído,
preservatives
ftalatos,
based
parabenos,
on
sustancias
formaldehyde and
Elizabeth,
formaldehyde releasing preservatives.
we've been asked by the interpreters if you could slow down just a little bit. And it's
¿verdad?
okay, we're good on time, so you can.
Perdón. Bueno, falatos o
Okay,
sustancias poli o
phthalate or
perfluoralquiladas que son
per
conocidas
and
como PFAS. Este sector
polyfluoroalkaline
no tiene
products.
mucho
This
impacto
sector doesn't
económico en
have
nuestra
a
región.
large
Es
economic
Estados Unidos
impact. In the
el mayor
United States,
consumidor
the
como
greatest
productor de
consumer,
estos
the
productos.
producer of these
En
products.
general,
In
en nuestros
general,
tres países
in the
existen
three
regulaciones
countries,
tanto de la
there are
producción como del
regulations
etiquetado de estos
in
productos.
labeling
En los
as
tres
well as in
países
the
se
production. In
utiliza,
the three countries, they
se
use,
ponen los
they
ingredientes de
put the
mayor a menor
ingredients, they include
concentración con
in the
ciertos umbrales
ingredients
y
with
dependiendo de la
certain
jurisdicción, a
thresholds,
veces
and
las
depending on the
fragancias se
jurisdiction,
pueden
maybe
omitir
the fragrances that
los
they can
ingredientes
use
o
or
pueden
not
poner
use
solamente los
in the
alérgenos,
ingredients,
como es en el caso
or
de
they can only
Canadá.
use, for
El
example, in
mercurio,
the
cabe
case of Canada,
resaltar, está
the
prohibido en su
allergens
composición mental en
in
los tres países.
the three countries
Hay ciertas
are prohibited
excepciones de
to
ciertas
use
sales, sí
metals,
se usa como
and
preservativo.
certain salts are used as preservatives.
En general, también
In
entiendo
general,
que en México hay un
we
gran
understand that in
mercado
Mexico
artesanal
there
que es muy
is
difícil de
a
regular
great
y
market,
también el
artisanal
mercado
market,
negro, que
and
son
it's very
productos que
difficult to
parecen
regulate,
originales
and the
pero
black
son
market,
adulterados como
because
para
these are
quitarle un
like
poco la
products
acidez
that look like
negra.
original,
También
but
cabe
they are
resaltar que en Estados Unidos
altered.
hay
In the
estados
United
que
States, there are
son mucho más
there are
progresivos en
states
sus
that
requisitos,
are
como es el
more
estado de
progressive
California,
in
como
their
lo fue
laws, like the
Oaxaca
state of
y el estado de
California
Nueva York,
and the state of New York
Massachusetts, etc.
and Massachusetts, etc.
Perdón, no puedo cambiar mi diapositiva.
I'm sorry, I can't
Sí.
change the slide.
Como mejores prácticas
As
en
best
este sector,
practices in
nuestros
this
países
sector,
hacen uso
our
de las
countries
listas
make
negativas.
use
Eso significa que
of
hay una
practice
lista,
of
no necesariamente igual en los
rules
tres
or
países,
regulations,
donde
not
se
the same
prohíbe
for
la
the three countries
comercialización de
where they
ciertos
ban
productos
the
y hay
use of
marcas,
certain
por ejemplo,
products,
que
and also,
recurren
for
a
example,
disimular el
uh,
total de
they
su formulación.
communicate
Las
the
asociaciones
formulas.
cosméticas
The
también
cosmetic
hacen uso de
associations
bases de datos
make use of
centralizadas que les
databases that are
permite comercializar
centralized
entre
that
jurisdicciones para
allows them to
cierto,
market between
si
jurisdictions
cierta sustancia está
to
prohibida
see
en
whether
cierta
certain
jurisdicción.
substances
Hay
are
mucho uso
prohibited
de lo
in
que se conoce
certain
como
jurisdiction.
ecoetiquetas y
There are
certificaciones que
like
de una forma
eco
menos
labels and
técnica
certifications
comunican al
in less
consumidor
technique,
que la producción de cierto
less
producto
technical
estuvo
manner.
regido
They
por ciertos
prohibit, for
estándares. Hay
example,
muchos otros ejemplos, los cuales
certain products
describimos
because
más
they don't meet the
en el caso de estudio
health
y
standards.
iniciativas
And
específicas de
in other
corporaciones o
industry,
marcas que son bastante progresivas.
and these are
En
very
general, los
progressive
motores
in
para
general,
la implementación de
the
estas mejores
motives
prácticas son,
for to
como dijimos,
implement
lo
these
primero es
best
la
practices
regulación, lo
are first,
segundo
like I
es la
mentioned,
demanda tanto de los
regulations.
consumidores como
The
de los
second is the
mayoristas o
retailer and
minoristas,
consumer demands,
políticas corporativas de diferentes
corporation
marcas que hacen
policies
que
from
otras
different
empresas sigan y
trademarks that make other companies
implementen este tipo
to
mejores
implement this
prácticas.
type of
En cuanto a las
best
barreras para
practices.
la
And
implementación
with regards
de
to
las
the
mejores
barriers for the
prácticas, se habló en el
implementation of
taller
best
de las
practices,
diferencias
we
entre
discussed
jurisdicciones y
the
definiciones de los
competition
productos.
and
El
leading
caso de la
companies
información
and
confidencial en
jurisdiction
la
and
comercialización
definitions,
de
the
fragancias, por ejemplo.
CBI,
Se habló, por
digital
ejemplo, en
trading
México del
platforms,
auge del
and
comercio digital.
also the
También
digital
presenta una
market.
gran barrera
This
porque no
presents
hay
a great
mucha
barrier
capacidad para que
because
la
there's
gente o
not
los
too much
agentes aduanales
capacity
reconozcan
so that
el
people
nombre
can
de ciertas
recognize the
sustancias que
name
pueden
of
cambiar.
these substances that can
La
change.
falta de recursos,
The
muchas
lack of
marcas no
resources
tienen
because many
el
trademarks
dinero
do
suficiente
not
para,
have
por ejemplo,
sufficient money
certificarse o tener
to
una
justify
ecoetiqueta
themselves
y
or to
recurren a
have
prácticas de
a,
marketing que
a
hacen que su
label, a
producto se
legal
vea más
label,
verde o
and
más
they go
limpio,
to
se llama greenwashing o
greenwashing or
pinkwashing. El
cleanwashing,
mercado negro, como ya
the
hablamos
black
un
market,
poco, y la falta
like
de
I mentioned before,
sensibilización
and the lack of consumer
respecto a los
awareness
peligros e
and
impactos que
misinformation
pueden tener. En el caso
that
específico de los
regarding these
cosméticos,
products.
creo que en este
In the
momento
case,
hay
the
mucha
specific case of
desinformación.
Mexico, there's
La
a lot of
innovación de
lack of
sustancias que
information
prometen mejorar
because the
nuestros cuerpos
innovation of
es mucho más
new
rápido que la
products
capacidad de
that
nuestros
improve
gobiernos
our
para
bodies
regularlas.
and they are produced faster than our governments can generate laws. As recommendations of this specific sector, we discussed in this seminar a comprehensive ingredient disclosure, including fragrances, allergens, and colors, and enhance compliance with existing regulations to improve the awareness about health and environmental impacts that Lori mentioned, and also to educate the consumer regarding the differences between the eco labels and to improve the collaboration between governments because each one has different capabilities, but it is important to improve the tests in order to have chemicals that are safer and that have different effects. That is all. Thank you very much. And I'm here to answer any questions if you have any doubts.
Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And next, we'll turn to our last speaker before we move to the panel discussion. So remember to drop your questions in the Q&A. So our next speaker is Seth Laxman. Seth, if you want to introduce yourself, and I will pull up your slides.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me in this amazing panel. My name is Seth Laxman. I use he, him pronouns. I live on Lenape land in Brooklyn, New York, and I work for Lush Cosmetics as the advocacy campaigner for our markets in the United States and Canada. So super excited to share a bit with you about the advocacy that we've been doing around mercury in cosmetics, as well as colorism in cosmetics, as well as a bit about our ethics in how we formulate ingredients, invent products, and support non-toxic beauty in general. So Michaela, I can't totally see the slides.
Oh, okay. I just advanced to your second slide. Can everybody else see the slides that I'm sharing?
Yeah, I think it's the presenter view, but I think that's okay.
Oh, okay. It's showing up for you as the presenter view?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Just give me 1 second, everybody, to fix that. Give me a second. Let's see. Is this still in presenter view? Yeah.
Now it's just the PowerPoint like normal window.
Oh, okay. It's the PowerPoint as normal?
It's like showing the editing screen, not the presenting screen.
Oh, okay. Give me 1 more second. I'm sorry. Let me stop share. Just 1 second. Okay. Apologies, everybody, for the slight technical difficulties. Okay. How about now? Is that good for you?
No.
No?
Oh,
yeah. No.
Oh, okay, great.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm on the second slide now.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just want to start off a little bit, of what we say about ourselves as a brand, right? So we call ourselves a campaigning company, and that encompasses the advocacy and activism that we do, and that's what I work on. But we also sell soap, we sell bath bombs, we sell all sorts of beauty and cosmetics products. And part of that is a goal to sell a product for every need is sort of the line that we say. But within that, we also do not and will never sell skin lightening products. Instead, we celebrate the beauty of all skin tones and create products that seek to nourish and protect and enhance everybody's, their skin's natural radiance without promoting harmful ideals like Eurocentric Western beauty standards. So, something that we strive to do in our advocacy and then also sort of in our normal marketing is intentionally spotlight, beautiful humans behind the brand, ensuring that our representation is authentic, empowering, and diverse. And so, it's from that, right, foundation as a cosmetics company that we come to this work on advocating against colorism in cosmetics, advocating for a ban on Mercury in particular has been, our focus and the way that we've been invited into this work. And so this falls within our commitment to advocating on issues, in a pretty big umbrella of human rights, animal protection, and environmental justice by engaging our customers, our staff, and the public. And so we'll take on issues that, are close to our business, right? So, for example, fighting animal testing was the original, activist goal of the company. We've also advocated against microbeads and plastic in cosmetics. And this is an example of an issue that is closely related to us as a business. But we'll also take on issues that are not related, right? So we've advocated a lot for freedom of movement and the rights of immigrants and refugees. We've campaigned on gun violence prevention in the United States. We've campaigned for many years on queer LGBTQ plus rights. And so we're always asking our customers to take direct action. We raise money with products that are invented specifically to raise money for the organizations and the social justice and progressive movements that we work with. And that's where our Day of Action comes in. If Michaela, you can go to the next slide. Earlier this year, on September 9th, we held a Day of Action in we have a little bit more than 250 retail stores across the United States and Canada. And so all of our staff invited all of our customers to come together on that day to call for an end to colorism in cosmetics and a ban on Mercury skin lightening products. And so we displayed, you can see the graphic that was in the front window. We had a sign that was displayed amongst the skincare products display that had one of those QR codes that people could scan and send a message directly to their country's, respective head of public health. And so really our goals with this, in partnership, we're working with the folks who work on this project at the United Nations Environmental Program, was first to really highlight the health and environmental risks associated with mercury exposure through skin lightening products. We really want to be counteracting the socio-cultural norms that perpetuate harmful beauty standards that fuel the demand and the use of toxic products, and this includes things like the legacy of colonialism, gendered expectations of beauty, and media's bias towards lighter skin. And then we have this call to action, right? We never really want to be raising awareness around an issue without doing something about it. And we really see that as kind of the superpower that we can contribute to movements, is fostering these conversations with millions of customers in our stores, getting these messages, in front of people. And I think especially on this issue, right, it's so closely related to what we do and what people come to our stores looking for, that it's a really great environment, right, to bring people into this issue and know more about what may be going on, and counteract what they might be seeing in other spaces that they're in. So this was just, our first step in terms of bringing our staff and our customers as a community into this work. We got a lot of positive feedback from our staff, both as they were preparing to have this day of action, and then afterwards, hearing how some of the conversations that they had with their customers about this issue went, and a lot of enthusiasm for continuing to be part of this work, and really appreciating, that Lush as their employer would be willing to talk about something like this. It's sort of a risk, right, to call out something that bad that's going on in the industry, that we're in, and also providing them the opportunity to learn and become activists on this issue. And it was really great. That's quite consistent with, the feedback we've gotten on other issues. So that was really heartening to see that it was so impactful for so many people. And I know we're going a bit over time, so I want to make sure we can get to questions. So I'll go to my last slide, which just to talk a little bit about, the products side of us, right? So we have all of our advocacy work, and that's what I do. And then I have so many amazing colleagues who invent our products, who buy and source the ingredients, who design our packaging and design our, marketing campaigns. And that's so intertwined with, the work that I do, especially on this issue. So I think that some of the things that you all might find interesting is our buying and supply chain practices. And so we have a really thoughtful team who spend a lot of time, as often as possible, buying ingredients directly from producers and from suppliers, so they have as much knowledge as possible as to how and where all of our ingredients come from. We do a lot of really sophisticated and modern testing of our products because of our commitment to not testing on animals. And so we, can be really confident that the products don't contain these impurities or other toxic ingredients. And then our inventors spend a lot of time on our formulas, really, minimizing the use of added synthetic preservatives. There's a whole project to make as many of our products self-preserving so that we can remove synthetics while, making sure that the shelf life of the products is still good for customers. And then, really believing that our customers have the right to know exactly what is in all of the products that they buy. And so all of our ingredients are quantitatively marked on all of the labels and have always been, and in many cases, well before that was required, in certain countries where we sell our products. And so overall, we really want to be challenging the industry norms, both in our representation, in our marketing, in our storytelling of our products, in our advocacy, and then, in the whole supply chain, from sourcing our ingredients to manufacturing the products to selling them in our shops and online. So yeah, thank you all. I've got my email on these slides, so would love to connect with anybody, who wants to talk more about our work. And yeah, looking forward to any questions that people have right now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Seth. Really appreciate that. And so now is the exciting time where all the speakers get to come together and answer the questions from the audience. So I know that some of you had been dropping questions into the Q&A, and maybe some of our speakers answered in the Q&A, but we also want to have a lively discussion. So we'll bring those to kind of the floor verbally as well. So Karina, did you want to share some of the questions that we had in Spanish?
Sí, gracias Micaela y gracias a todos y todas las
Right, thanks
panelistas.
Micaela. Thanks to all our panelists as well. One of the most recurring questions was, how can we tell, how can we know if a product or cosmetic contains mercury? For example, would that be in the ingredients list? So I open up the floor to your answers.
Great. And if the panelists can just unmute themselves and answer freely, I think, Lori.
Sure. Can you hear me still? Okay. The bad thing is most of these cosmetics that contain mercury do not have an ingredients list. I think in all my years of doing this work, I've only once seen a product that was collected in 2002 in New York City by our colleagues there that contained mercury, and it was from the Dominican Republic. So it's unreliable, and as Seth's work points out as well, that cosmetics don't disclose all their ingredients. Most ingredients don't make sense to any of us anyway. They're complicated mixtures. So basically, you cannot tell. So what can you do? And this is not foolproof, but things you can do. You can not buy products for skin lightening, skin bleaching, to get rid of spots, dark spots on the skin, to get rid of wrinkles, or for acne. Do not buy products online. And when you do buy products, the best thing to do in terms of forming dark spots on your skin and darkening your skin overall is to use a very high quality sunblock with SPF of up to 50, and then reapply frequently. This is really difficult to do in terms of for people wanting to buy cosmetics. So I have no answers. I'm not a dermatologist, but I go to a dermatologist and they say use a sunblock all the time. So avoid those. Avoid sun exposure. Also have a look on our website. We have 146 creams that we've collected and posted there. You can look on Zero Mercury Working Group. They have creams list posted, as well as New York City and Minnesota. Because of the demographic differences across the country, you'll see different types of creams in different locations in the United States. And also Zero Mercury, WeAct actually soon is going to be posting or publishing a report. It's WeAct for Environmental Justice, a wonderful organization we've collaborated quite a bit with, is posting a report in which they have done tremendous work to bring all of our products together, and you can look for products. You can look for what to avoid on those lists. There's no foolproof answer. There's no magic way to go about this. When people say to us, when we go into communities and we conduct testing of products that include for lead and mercury, we bring gift cards to Target and we do kind of our own version of a buyback. It's buy back the bad creams and give people a gift certificate to a store that it has a reputation and doesn't sell products. They might sell imported products, but they sell well-known brands. And so for $25, people can buy that. But we all want a magic fix. I can tell you myself, aging is quite difficult to look at your skin and to see spots and wrinkles, but we have to get to love the skin we're in.
Great. Thank you so much, Lori. And I also see we have another question from the audience for the group, which is, for a market like the poorly regulated cosmetics market, would it be useful to create a system for labeling and communicating toxic compounds similar to the front of package labeling that is on food? And I know it differs from the US, Canada, and Mexico, but Mexico has really great front of package labeling when it comes to flagging, high sugar content in food. So yeah, I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on that. And yep, go for it. I think maybe Seth, if you wanted to kick this one off about labeling, or Elizabeth, one of you.
Oh, but maybe I can, perdón, voy a hablar en español. ¿Puedo hablar acerca de algunas de estas iniciativas?
I can talk about some of the initiatives that have come up, like Lori's. And we have a compiled chart where we name a lot of initiatives, from volunteer organizations to more formal associations, like the Mexican Chamber for Cosmetics that has a code of ethics. And to be part of that association, you do need to meet certain standards. So that, of course, is helpful. But one thing that I really like and appreciate is the work of the Environmental Working Group. They have a very large database with information from scientists and people from society who have really taken to the task of evaluating the possible effects and damages of chemical contents in lots of products. And that is in a database called Skin Deep, which is just open to the public and only in English. However, of course, not all of the products that you will see on that database are available in all 3 countries. But anyway, to add to how to identify mercury, thanks to the Denmark Agreement, mercury is forbidden as such, but it can be added as a preservative. Therefore, if your brand only mentions that it has preservatives, rather than naming each of the preservatives, and you can start questioning their transparency. So, in Mexico, we use mercury a lot as well in what we know as mertiolate, which is for treating wounds. And that's it. I don't know if anyone has anything to add.
Seth, did you have anything to add about labeling or ingredients disclosure?
I would say I got maybe most of what you said, Elizabeth, but not all of it, so I'm not sure. What I could add, that it was great.
Okay, great. And then I think we have a question that Karina has prepared from the audience. Karina?
Gracias, Micaela. Sí, tenemos esta pregunta. En los casos de impactos
Thanks, Michaela. We have a question regarding neurological impacts. And the question is, were these cosmetics or creams the only exposure they had to mercury, or did this include diet as well? And how large can exposure to mercury be in fruits and vegetables that have been fumigated?
I think that one's for Lori. And just to summarize, really considering the data that you presented, Lori, with the poisoning cases, how do you know essentially that it's from the skin lighteners and not from fish or vegetables or other things?
Yeah. Thank you for the questions. Very interesting. When we, oftentimes we get a case, people send us creams, consumers, people in the community send us creams, or we're at a community event and we pick up creams and we exchange it for a Target gift card, or there's a poisoning case or someone who's really sick and we're called in to help with an investigation. In those cases, when we identify a cream, we are able to almost foolproof say this is a mercury poisoning from a skin cream. If it were from fish, for example, it wouldn't appear in the urine. The mercury wouldn't appear in the urine. That would be in the blood only, so that helps us to distinguish. And also, when somebody is really sick and they're using a skin lightening cream and they might have symptoms, the last thing we want to do is try to investigate other things in their environment. But we advise physicians to monitor as they kind of mark, okay, this person has mercury poisoning and I'm going to follow them. We advise physicians to follow people every 2 months to check the mercury level in urine 2 to 3 months. And then when we see a downward trend and they've eliminated the mercury exposure, they've eliminated the cream, we can almost tell that it's a cream. However, we do get a lot of mercury poisonings and lead and mercury poisonings in adults and sometimes children that are from other types of products. Fish, for example, Ayurveda products, particularly, we see a lot of that. We see it from products used in Mexico, many products that we see lead, but we also see mercury in those products. Those two contaminants are both heavy metals. Usually when you eliminate one, you identify one and you remove the source from a person's life, everything, all of the chemicals go down and the person's health benefits. Was this also the question, Michaela, that had to do with vegetables.
Yeah, if you're familiar with that, about the fumigation of vegetables with mercury.
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with some very big cases of mercury poisonings from contaminated seeds. I know that these chemicals have been mostly gone out of fashion, meaning they're have been removed from production. However, that doesn't mean that people don't have hordes of stored chemicals that they're using. There have been some very, very severe mercury poisonings, particularly, I believe, in Afghanistan, when people were dying of famine and seeds had been fumigated with ethyl mercury, and people became very, very poisoning. Ethyl mercury has carbon bound to it, so people got really sick. So all I'm saying is those are basically removed from marketing. It doesn't mean that they're not going to be used in places where they're stored, particularly where people don't have the ability to purchase new fumigants.
Thank you so much for that. And then we have a comment from the audience that will also turn into a question. So this is from Alejandro Martinez, who says, I live in Mexico and I feel like cosmetic products are marketed and sold without really care for the harms that it can do to our health. And so kind of to add on to this, I guess my question is for Andrea, which is that you've done all of this work in Mexico with women discussing beauty standards and the very difficult challenges that they face, whether it's from the state or family pressures. And so with knowing that there are these harmful products so widely available on the market, how do you see ways forward in being able to have conversations with people and raise more awareness of these issues?
Gracias. Creo que la pregunta que me acabas de hacer, Micaela,
right. So I think that question has to do with a question that was just included in the Q&A chat. So indirectly, I'll answer that one now too. So there are several pathways that we should go down here. I'll try to be brief. First, in Mexico's most recent history, beauty and race have been strongly linked to health. So we need to be very mindful not to think of health from the medical field or from the body itself as we understand it, but of the understanding of health that regular people have. So we're sitting here as a group of experts, and we can all say, okay, it is desirable for people to use healthy products. However, we have health as we ourselves know it, and then health as the general population understands it. For example, in a job interview, a person can look at an interviewee and say, that person has clear, healthy skin. That's a healthy person. That's a huge distinction. And that's where we have the demand, among other things, for cosmetics that could include hydroquinone or mercury or other harmful products. So I think, as I said in my presentation, I will reiterate that we need to address the consumer, the average layman consumer. However, we see the demand for these products that goes beyond only having whiter, lighter skin. For example, I've seen a specific case that I've even talked about in a few conferences. I go into a law firm And I see that the junior partners that are promoted more frequently, that are invited to projects outside the office hours, these are people who have lighter skin. So, seeing that, I will turn to these products. On the other hand, you have a police officer that goes onto the bus and brings immigrants to the questioning rooms, and they are only bringing people that have a darker skin tone. That also causes a certain type of pressure for a person to use those skin lightening products, even if I don't think that lighter skin means more beautiful skin. So it's pressure from people of authority, of a hierarchy, that you need to impact as well. So it is important to discuss about product regulation. However, we have this figure of authority that is imposing the use of those lightening products. Now, I think this is a social problem. It is an issue that is rather serious. And I think if we do ever reach a solution, that solution would be going beyond our understanding of beauty or health or even hygiene. I didn't bring this up because I ran out of time, but most of the products that have some sort of skin lightening product that I found in Mexico are cleansing products. They're soap bars or that are associated with cleanliness, like deodorants even. And this goes hand in hand with that demand for a certain type of appearance that is associated to race and to social status. There is a weight there as well in hygiene. So, if we go further, we need to continue to question these issues, but also we need to bring in alternatives to take over those elements of sensory factors or even affection and morality that go hand in hand with these products. And I do think that there are others without hydroquinone, without mercury, without harmful ingredients that can become more accessible and affordable, and that they can reach people who are actually consuming these skin lightening products.
Thank you so much for that, Andrea. And Karina, did you see any other questions in the chat that we hadn't gotten to? I know that there's one from Michael Bender, which I'll paraphrase here in a moment.
Por ahora no, entonces tienes la palabra,
right now.
Micaela.
Gracias,
Gracias.
Micaela.
Okay, great. So I'll ask this question, but I don't know that we have the answer to it. So in the chat, we have okay, so the recent Zero Mercury Working Group study released last week indicates that Amazon still sells many mercury-containing skin lighteners, and that also there are manufacturing facilities in Mexico. And so the question, which I don't think any of us on this call might have the answer to, is where are these facilities in Mexico, and what is Mexico doing about this? And secondly, it seems that Canada actually doesn't have quite as much of an issue with having mercury added skin lighteners sold on online websites, but it is a big problem in the US and Mexico. And so the question is, could the CEC send a survey to the three governments to learn more about this issue? Because it's something quite concerning across the North American continent. And so, like I said, I don't know that I know where any of the facilities are for manufacturing in Mexico. I don't know if Lori or Andrea, if you've had any information about manufacturing sites for the products that you've come across. But we definitely can take the idea of this survey and talk to the higher ups at the CHC to see if that's something that would be a possibility. Great. Were there any additional questions or comments from the speakers?
Solo para
Elizabeth?
complementar tu respuesta.
Just to add to your question. Yes, it's a challenge to regulate not only mercury, but all the other ingredients that are included in the cosmetics. The laws that we have are fine, but to comply with them and to follow them is a challenge because at least in Mexico, it's the set is very small, but we have a platform from other countries, from other places, where we are receiving migrants, and they have raw materials that we don't know where they're coming from. It's a challenge not only for Mexico, but for the three countries, and definitely, and if you agree, I believe that the collaboration and learning from what the other countries are doing is basic, because the work that Lori is doing, for example, I don't know if Lori communicates with authorities from Semarnat or Profepa, but I think that it is very important that there's a system to share information between the three countries, and especially to improve the way in which we purchase and we consume, because many times you think that an artisanal product is healthier than a commercial product, but you have to see a way of improving the labeling and that it reaches the markets that it should reach. It's a challenge.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And then Lori?
Yeah. Yes. Oops. Sorry, I was listening in Spanish. I just want to say that this forum is really important, and the work that CEC is doing is very important. You can count on us to be available and talk more about what we're seeing. This is an absolute failure of the FDA in the United States, a failure of every regulatory system that exists, enforcement at the EPA, at the CDC, at the FDA, and in California. When you ask a regulatory agency why they don't do as much, they feel that the problem is a whack-a-mole problem, that they do some enforcement, which is basically they overdo everything. They make enforcement so difficult and so paperwork intensive that it becomes a difficult area to really do. So what we're all experiencing is a legacy of colonialism that exists, continues to exist throughout the world. The best system for regulation enforcement is in Europe. That doesn't mean that we have seen products that have led to mercury poisoning that say made in France, but actually they were made in Asia. So it's just a very, very uphill battle. I know I'm sounding very negative here, but I also want to encourage us to work together to try within our own area. Government is not part of the solution, honestly. And it's the advocacy groups. It's people like Zero Mercury Working Group, We Act, and possibly also the UN and projects they're doing all over the world. I want to feel very positive about this, and I think working together we can feel positive if we just feel like we're making incremental change. So I hope I didn't end on too negative a note, but thank you everyone for being here and for being involved in this and really committing your heart and your minds to this issue.
Thank you so much for that, Lori. And I think that really highlights the need for having collaboration. And, as we can see from the talks here, that, this isn't just a regulation issue, but we have to work together to address some of these big societal issues. Also, working with the private sector to have the ingredients actually listed on the products, making sure that the ingredients are those that are safer for human health. And as we saw from the example from Lush Cosmetics, it is possible to have responsible companies, but we need to also work with the private sector to get there so that we don't have health harming cosmetics on the market. And so just as a kind of last reminder for all of you, this was part of a community resilience webinar series. So we're here to have discussions about difficult topics that are impacting our communities across North America. I know that this is a rather niche topic, but I think as you can see, it's a really big issue. And so I'd really like to thank all of our speakers for joining us and giving us such a breadth of information. And we will be having one more community resilience webinar coming up next month. And this is going to be about the impacts of changing seasonality on communities. And we'll also be sending a follow-up survey to all of you to see how you like this webinar. And we'll be posting the video and also the presentation slides online on the event page. And so with that, I would like to thank all of you for joining us, and thank you for your feedback and your time.